What if a forbidden love led someone to commit an unimaginable act? This harrowing true crime story from New Orleans, Louisiana, unravels the dark and twisted tale of a mother whose secret affair with her stepson ignited a chain of events that culminated in a shocking tragedy, forever altering the lives of those involved and leaving a community in disbelief. How far would she go to protect her hidden desires? Mother, Sarah Thompson. At 38 years old, Sarah Thompson is a devoted mother and former school teacher known in the community as a nurturing figure who has always put her children first. With a warm smile and an open heart, she has been the cornerstone of her family, actively participating in local events and volunteering at the neighborhood school. However, beneath her seemingly perfect exterior lies a tumultuous life marked by loneliness and unfulfilled desires. As whispers about her relationship with her stepson begin to circulate, the community's perception of her as a loving mother starts to fracture, revealing the hidden darkness that she desperately tries to conceal. Stepson, Jake Thompson. At 22 years old, Jake Thompson is a charismatic and troubled young man, often seen as the black sheep of the family. With a charming smile and an adventurous spirit, he has always had a complicated relationship with his stepmother, Sarah. While they share moments of genuine connection and understanding, their bond is shadowed by underlying tension and unspoken desires. Jake grapples with feelings of isolation and rebellion, seeking solace in his stepmother's attention, which gradually blurs the lines of their relationship. As the affair unfolds, Jake becomes entwined in a dangerous web of secrets and emotions, leading him down a dark path that neither he nor Sarah could have anticipated. Mark Reynolds, a 40-year-old family friend and local mechanic. Mark Reynolds is an affable and charming man who has known Sarah since her marriage to Jake's father. While he initially appeared to be just another supportive figure in the family's life, Mark's presence quickly takes on a more significant role. His flirtatious nature and easygoing demeanor draw Sarah in, providing her with the attention and affection she craves. As their relationship deepens, Mark becomes entangled in the web of secrecy surrounding Sarah and Jake's affair. His involvement adds an additional layer of complexity as he struggles with his feelings for Sarah while grappling with the moral implications of their hidden connection. Ultimately, Mark's actions set off a chain reaction that will lead to devastating consequences for everyone involved. Sarah Thompson appears to lead an idyllic life in New Orleans, Louisiana, embodying the quintessential devoted mother. She is actively involved in her children's lives, volunteering at their school and organizing community events, earning her the reputation of a caring and supportive neighbor. Her home is filled with laughter, and she prides herself on creating a warm, loving environment for her family. However, beneath this facade lies a world of turmoil and despair. As Sarah navigates the challenges of her marriage and the complexities of raising her children, she finds herself increasingly drawn to Jake, her stepson. Their bond, initially built on mutual understanding, begins to morph into something far more sinister. The more she tries to maintain the image of a perfect mother, the more the weight of her hidden affair grows, creating a tension that hangs in the air, waiting to unravel. The duality of her life, one filled with community involvement and family love, the other shadowed by illicit desires, sets the stage for a tragedy that threatens to shatter everything she holds dear. In the heart of New Orleans, Louisiana, the Thompson family resided in a charming two-story home adorned with vibrant flowers and a well-kept lawn. The neighborhood bustled with life, filled with friendly faces and laughter, where kids played in the streets and families gathered for weekend barbecues. From the outside, the Thompsons seemed like any typical family, participating in local events and engaging with their community. Their home, painted in warm hues, was a gathering place for friends and family, often hosting holiday celebrations and game nights. However, behind the picturesque facade lay a brewing storm. The cozy atmosphere masked a growing tension within the family, especially as Sarah found herself increasingly drawn to Jake, her stepson. The walls that once echoed with joy began to harbor secrets, and the vibrant colors of their lives slowly faded into a more somber reality, setting the stage for the dark events that were about to unfold. As the summer of 2023 unfolded, Sarah found herself entangled in a web of deceit that began with whispered conversations in the quiet corners of their home. Late at night, when her husband was away on business trips, she would meet Jake in the living room, their voices barely above a whisper as they navigated the complexities of their relationship. These discussions, initially centered around their shared interests and feelings of isolation, gradually morphed into something more intimate. The thrill of their secret connection sent shivers down Sarah's spine, yet it was also laced with fear of the inevitable fallout. During these late-night exchanges, Sarah confided in Jake about her frustrations with her marriage and her longing for emotional intimacy. Jake, in turn, revealed his own feelings of being an outsider in the family, craving acceptance and validation from Sarah. As the conversations deepened, so did their bond, leading to moments of passion that neither of them had intended. Each encounter heightened the tension, creating a sense of urgency as Sarah's guilt gnawed at her. But the stakes rose dramatically when Mark, the family friend, discovered the nature of Sarah and Jake's relationship during a casual conversation. Concerned but intrigued, Mark unwittingly became involved in the cover-up. He warned Sarah of the potential consequences if anyone found out, emphasizing that their secret would destroy her family and reputation. In a moment of panic, Sarah turned to Jake for support, and together they plotted to keep their affair hidden at all costs. As the tension escalated, the atmosphere in the house grew heavier. Sarah felt trapped between her role as a mother and her dangerous desires, while Jake wrestled with the burden of being complicit in a cover-up that threatened to unravel their lives. The more they tried to maintain the illusion of a normal family, the more precarious their situation became, setting the stage for a tragic confrontation that could change everything. As the secret of her affair with Jake deepened, Sarah's once steady demeanor began to unravel. The weight of her hidden life pressed down on her, manifesting in subtle yet noticeable changes in her behavior. Friends and family started to notice her increasingly erratic mood swings. One moment, she would be engaged and vibrant, laughing heartily at a neighbor's joke, and the next, she'd retreat into silence, her eyes clouded with worry. At home, the tension brewed beneath the surface. Sarah became overly vigilant, her heart racing at the slightest sound, a creaking floorboard or a whispered conversation. She found herself unable to focus on mundane tasks, her mind racing with thoughts of exposure and the consequences that would follow. The anxiety took a toll on her daily life. She would forget simple errands, lose track of conversations, and snap at her children for minor infractions, all the while trying to mask her inner turmoil. Jake, too, noticed the shift. Sarah's once warm and nurturing presence began to feel strained, her affection tinged with desperation. Their late-night conversations became charged with unspoken fears, and the thrill they once shared was overshadowed by an all-consuming paranoia. As she paced the halls at night, wrestling with her thoughts, Sarah felt increasingly isolated, trapped in a web of her own making. The love that had drawn her to Jake now felt like a ticking time bomb, threatening to explode and shatter the fragile facade she had so carefully constructed. Each passing day only intensified her anxiety, propelling her further into a state of emotional chaos as she struggled to maintain her grip on reality. As the weeks passed, the signs of Sarah's internal struggle began to surface, drawing the attention of those around her. Family members noted her growing anxiety during family gatherings, where she would laugh a little too loudly or linger too long in conversations, as if trying to convince herself that everything was fine. Her husband, David, often commented on her distracted demeanor, wondering aloud if she was feeling unwell. Despite her reassurances, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Friends and neighbors also started to take notice. Sarah, who was once the life of the party, began avoiding social events. She canceled plans at the last minute, claiming she was busy with household chores or feeling overwhelmed. Her absence was felt keenly by those who had come to rely on her warmth and energy, leading to whispers of concern about her well-being. In the quiet of her home, small clues hinted at her turmoil. Items that were once in their designated places, keys, her purse, even family photos, began to go missing. Sarah found herself frequently misplacing things, her mind clouded with worry. Late-night walks became her escape, but neighbors noticed her erratic hours, often seeing her pacing alone under the moonlight, her face a mask of tension and fear. Avoidance became a key behavior. Sarah distanced herself from certain friends, especially those who were particularly close to Jake, fearing their suspicions might lead to the truth. Conversations that once flowed easily turned awkward, leaving her feeling isolated. Each interaction felt like a risk, amplifying her anxiety as she worked tirelessly to keep her secret buried. The mounting pressure to maintain her facade began to take its toll, and the cracks in her seemingly perfect life were becoming increasingly visible to those around her. As Sarah navigated the murky waters of her dual existence, a growing sense of entrapment enveloped her. The very person who had ignited her forbidden passion, Jake, her stepson, now loomed in her mind as a potential threat. What had begun as an exhilarating escape from the mundane had transformed into a source of constant dread. Each time she caught sight of him, a wave of anxiety washed over her, intensifying her fear that their secret could slip out. In the quiet moments of her day, Sarah found herself replaying their shared memories with an unsettling clarity. The stolen glances, the whispered words exchanged in hushed tones, and the adrenaline rush that had once thrilled her now felt like chains binding her to an inevitable disaster. Every time Jake entered a room, her heart raced, not from excitement, but from the chilling realization that he held the power to unravel everything. She started to see him not as the loving stepson she once cherished, but as a ticking time bomb, capable of detonating the carefully constructed life she had built around her. Paranoia began to seep into her thoughts. What if he accidentally let slip their secret to someone? What if he grew tired of the deceit and sought attention for himself, exposing their affair? With each passing day, her perception of Jake shifted, transforming their relationship into a delicate dance filled with danger. The warmth that had once characterized their bond was overshadowed by a cold, calculating fear. The walls of her home, which had always felt safe, now closed in on her, leaving her with an overwhelming sense of isolation. As she looked at Jake, the lines between affection and danger blurred, amplifying her anxiety and solidifying her resolve to keep their dark secret hidden at all costs. In October 2023, the small, tight-knit community of Oakwood was shattered when the lifeless body of Jake was discovered in the woods near their home. Initially reported missing by Sarah just days earlier, his sudden disappearance had raised alarm bells among family and friends. When search teams combed the area, they were unprepared for the haunting scene that would soon unfold. Jake's body was found partially concealed beneath a tangle of fallen branches and leaves, as if someone had hastily tried to hide the evidence. The investigators arrived at the scene, their hearts heavy with the weight of the tragedy. They carefully examined the area, noting the unusual placement of Jake's body and the signs of a struggle. Initial reports suggested that he had been the victim of foul play, but the true horror lay in the details that began to emerge. Sarah, in her frantic desperation, had staged the scene to suggest an accident, a simple fall during a late-night walk. She had carefully positioned Jake's belongings around him, trying to create a narrative that would protect her from suspicion. However, the forensic team quickly began to unravel her deceit. Marks on Jake's wrists indicated he had been restrained, and a thorough examination revealed bruising consistent with a violent confrontation. As the investigators delved deeper into Jake's last known movements, they uncovered unsettling evidence that pointed directly to Sarah. Witness accounts from neighbors who had seen her arguing with him the night he went missing painted a grim picture of a relationship fraught with tension and desperation. The horrifying truth began to surface. Jake had discovered his mother's secret affair with him and had threatened to expose her, leading Sarah to commit the unthinkable act of murder to silence him forever. The community, once filled with warmth and familiarity, now stood in shock as the details of the crime unfolded. The quiet facade of their lives crumbled, revealing the dark underbelly of betrayal and tragedy that had seeped into the heart of their home. As the sun began to set over Oakwood, casting long shadows through the trees, a chilling silence enveloped the woods where Jake's body was found. The air was thick with an unsettling tension, broken only by the distant rustle of leaves and the muted murmurs of the search party. The investigators arrived on the scene, their expressions grave as they surveyed the surroundings. The crime scene was eerily still, the vibrant autumn foliage contrasting sharply with the grim reality of what lay beneath. Jake's body, partially obscured by a tangle of branches and underbrush, seemed almost to blend into the forest floor, creating a haunting tableau. The once familiar area, often filled with laughter and joy from families exploring nature, now felt like a dark and sinister place, a stark reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded within its confines. As the detectives began to cordon off the area, the air grew heavy with an unshakable sense of foreboding. The initial shock washed over them like a cold wave. They exchanged glances of disbelief, their minds racing to comprehend the reality of the situation. Evidence markers were placed around the scene, drawing attention to the various clues that hinted at the violent struggle that had taken place. The investigators carefully examined Jake's lifeless form, noting the bruises and markings that spoke of a desperate fight for survival. The sight was heart-wrenching. A young life extinguished far too soon, a future lost to a moment of madness. As they documented the scene, a heavy silence fell upon the nearby searchers who had gathered, their faces etched with horror as the grim reality set in. Whispers of disbelief spread among them. How could this happen in their quiet town? Neighbors who had come to offer their support now stood in stunned silence at the periphery of the crime scene, their eyes wide with shock. They were drawn in by the commotion, desperate for answers, but met only with the cold, hard truth of violence that had shattered their community. Friends who had known Jake as a carefree boy began to weep openly, clutching each other in disbelief, struggling to understand how someone they loved could become a victim of such a horrific crime. The unsettling atmosphere thickened as investigators uncovered more evidence, each piece adding to the growing horror. A discarded item, a bloody shirt, lay nearby, and the realization dawned on them that this was not just a tragic accident. It was a calculated act of violence that would forever change the lives of everyone in Oakwood. The truth was unfolding, and with it came the chilling realization that the darkness they had overlooked in their midst had claimed yet another innocent soul. The investigation into Jake's murder quickly became one of the most high-profile cases for the Oakwood Police Department. Lead detectives, Jessica Hart and Mark Lawson, were tasked with unraveling the truth behind this chilling crime. Detective Jessica Hart, a seasoned investigator with over a decade of experience, was known for her sharp instincts and relentless pursuit of justice. Her piercing blue eyes missed nothing, and her reputation for solving complex cases made her the perfect fit for this investigation. With a background in forensic psychology, she had a keen understanding of human behavior, which would prove essential as she navigated the twisted dynamics of family secrets. Partnering with her was Detective Mark Lawson, a 10-year veteran of the department with a knack for forensic evidence. His calm demeanor contrasted with Hart's intensity, and together they formed a formidable team. Lawson had a reputation for his meticulous attention to detail. He understood that every piece of evidence, no matter how small, could lead to the breakthrough they desperately needed. As soon as the scene was secured, the detectives began combing through the evidence with unwavering determination. They meticulously examined Jake's body and the surrounding area, documenting every detail that could provide insight into the moments leading up to his death. With forensic teams collecting samples and photographing the scene, Hart and Lawson interviewed witnesses and gathered background information on Jake and Sarah's relationship. The detectives soon discovered a troubling web of secrets and lies. Interviews with neighbors revealed that Jake had been acting strangely in the weeks leading up to his death, showing signs of distress and fear. One neighbor reported overhearing heated arguments between Sarah and Jake, painting a troubling picture of their increasingly volatile relationship. This information sparked the detectives' suspicions, compelling them to delve deeper into Sarah's life. Investigating Sarah's background, the detectives uncovered her seemingly perfect facade as a devoted mother. Friends described her as kind and caring, but as they dug further, they began to piece together a different narrative. They learned about Sarah's secret affair with her stepson and the implications it carried. Each revelation added another layer of complexity to the case, fueling their determination to uncover the truth. Using forensic analysis, Lawson examined the evidence collected from the crime scene, including Jake's clothing and the surrounding soil samples. A breakthrough came when they found traces of Sarah's DNA on the shirt, indicating her presence at the scene during the time of the murder. This was the pivotal moment that shifted the investigation towards Sarah as the prime suspect. With mounting evidence against her, the detectives brought Sarah in for questioning. Hart, with her keen insight into human behavior, aimed to probe her psyche, while Lawson focused on the physical evidence. As they confronted her with the findings, the tension in the room escalated. The detectives' relentless pursuit of the truth, combined with Sarah's wavering resolve, created a charged atmosphere, setting the stage for a dramatic revelation. The investigation was far from over, but with each clue they uncovered, Hart and Lawson moved closer to exposing the dark reality of the crime that had shattered the community of Oakwood. As the investigation unfolded, the forensic evidence gathered from the crime scene initially presented a complex puzzle for the detectives. At first glance, the clues appeared disjointed, and the evidence collected was not strong enough to make definitive conclusions. However, as the forensic teams meticulously analyzed each piece, a clearer picture began to emerge, slowly uncovering Sarah's chilling involvement in Jake's murder. The first key piece of forensic evidence was the blood samples found on Jake's clothing. Initially, the analysis revealed several blood types at the scene, making it difficult to pinpoint the source. The presence of multiple blood types suggested a struggle, and investigators couldn't yet determine if Sarah's blood was involved. It was during the second round of tests that forensic analysts discovered a small, but crucial amount of Sarah's DNA mixed with Jake's blood. This shocking revelation hinted at a more sinister involvement than mere coincidence. In addition to the blood analysis, investigators uncovered multiple inconsistencies in Sarah's statements during questioning. Initially, she portrayed herself as a devastated mother, expressing her grief over Jake's death. However, as the detectives delved deeper, they found that her alibi for the night of the murder was shaky at best. Sarah claimed to have been at home alone, but her timeline did not align with the evidence collected from her phone records, which showed unusual activity at the time of Jake's death. As the detectives probed further, they discovered that Sarah had made several phone calls to a friend during the crucial hours leading up to the murder. When questioned, her friend recalled that Sarah had seemed unusually anxious and asked leading questions about how to deal with a difficult family situation. This testimony raised red flags for Hart and Lawson, prompting them to consider what Sarah was truly hiding. Moreover, the forensic team examined the crime scene for any signs of a struggle. They found small traces of skin and fibers under Jake's fingernails, indicating he had fought back against his attacker. Analysis of these fibers led back to Sarah's clothing, suggesting a direct confrontation between mother and stepson. This evidence was pivotal in shifting the focus squarely onto her. The culmination of the blood analysis and the inconsistencies in Sarah's story created a mounting case against her. With each piece of evidence collected, the detectives grew more confident in their theory that Sarah had orchestrated a cover-up to conceal her involvement in the crime. As the investigation continued, the forensic evidence became a crucial linchpin, unveiling the dark truth that had long been hidden beneath the facade of a grieving mother. As the investigation progressed, Detectives Jessica Hart and Mark Lawson focused on conducting interviews with family members, neighbors, and individuals connected to the hidden affair between Sarah and her stepson, Jake. These interviews were crucial in piecing together the motives behind the murder and revealing the intricate web of deceit surrounding Sarah's life. Family interviews. The detectives first approached Sarah's estranged husband, David, who had recently returned home from a business trip. He appeared shocked by the news of Jake's death and expressed confusion about Sarah's behavior in the weeks leading up to the tragedy. She seemed distant, he admitted, like she was hiding something. I thought it was just stress from work and family issues. However, as he described their marriage, inconsistencies in Sarah's story began to emerge. David mentioned that Sarah had become increasingly secretive with her phone, often taking calls in another room and avoiding conversations about Jake. Neighbor accounts. Next, the detectives interviewed neighbors who had noticed changes in Sarah and Jake's behavior. One neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, recalled overhearing loud arguments between Sarah and Jake. It was strange, she said. They used to be so close, like best friends. But lately, it seemed like there was tension. I even heard Sarah yelling at him one night. Mrs. Thompson's observations were corroborated by another neighbor, who mentioned seeing Jake leave the house late at night on multiple occasions. These testimonies painted a picture of a deteriorating relationship filled with emotional turmoil and conflict. The affair unveiled. To uncover the affair, the detectives turned to Sarah's friend, Lisa, who was initially reluctant to speak out. After several attempts to gain her trust, Lisa finally confessed to having witnessed Sarah's increasingly erratic behavior. She was scared, Lisa revealed. I knew she was seeing Jake in a way that wasn't right, but she swore me to secrecy. She was terrified of what would happen if David found out. Lisa's account added depth to the motive behind Sarah's actions, suggesting that her fear of exposure drove her to desperate measures. The growing fear of exposure. As the interviews progressed, a common theme emerged: Sarah's growing fear of being exposed. Several witnesses recounted instances where they saw her frantically texting or receiving phone calls from Jake during odd hours. One family member recounted a particularly telling incident where Sarah had a panic attack after receiving an anonymous tip about her relationship with Jake. She thought someone knew, the family member said, and it sent her into a spiral. It was like she was unraveling. This mounting pressure and fear added layers of complexity to Sarah's motives. The detectives noted how her anxiety and paranoia seemed to escalate in the days leading up to Jake's murder. Friends and family mentioned her increasingly erratic behavior, including unexplained absences and heightened irritability, suggesting that the weight of her secrets was becoming unbearable. Confrontation with the affair. Eventually, the detectives brought Sarah in for a follow-up interview, armed with the information they had gathered. They confronted her with the testimonies and evidence, revealing the depth of her deceit. As they laid out the timeline of Jake's activities and the statements from those who witnessed their interactions, Sarah's facade began to crumble. "You're painting me as a monster," she exclaimed, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. "I loved him, but it wasn't like that. It was complicated." The emotional interviews laid bare the tangled web of relationships and motives, pushing the detectives closer to understanding the true nature of the crime. Each witness account, with its echoes of fear, deception, and conflict, formed a dramatic backdrop to the chilling reality of what had transpired in the seemingly normal life of a devoted mother. As the trial of Sarah Johnson unfolded in the packed courtroom of Los Angeles, California, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The prosecution painted a chilling portrait of a mother driven to desperation by her own dark secrets, while the defense fought to portray Sarah as a victim of circumstance. Each day brought emotionally charged testimonies that captivated the audience and left many in tears. Opening statements. The trial commenced with the prosecution's opening statement delivered by Assistant District Attorney Emily Martinez. "What we have here is a case of betrayal," she declared, looking directly at Sarah, who sat stoically at the defendant's table. A mother who was supposed to protect her child instead chose to indulge in a forbidden love that led to murder. The room fell silent, the gravity of her words resonating deeply. Gripping testimonies from family members. The first witness called to the stand was David Johnson, Sarah's estranged husband. His voice cracked as he recounted the last days leading up to Jake's death. "I had no idea what was happening right under my nose," he testified, fighting back tears. "Sarah was my wife. I trusted her. How could she betray us like this?" His emotional plea struck a chord with the jury, illustrating the profound sense of loss and betrayal that enveloped their family. Next was Lisa Carter, Sarah's close friend, who hesitated but ultimately revealed the truth about Sarah's affair with Jake. "I tried to warn her, but she was too far gone," Lisa admitted, her voice shaking. "I saw how scared she was, but I never thought it would come to this. She loved Jake in a way that was wrong, and it consumed her." The courtroom was filled with whispers as Lisa's testimony laid bare the complexity of their relationship. Police investigators take the stand. Detectives Jessica Hart and Mark Lawson were called to provide insight into the investigation. Detective Hart recounted the moment they discovered the staged crime scene, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "It was one of the most disturbing cases I've ever encountered," she said. Every detail pointed to Sarah's involvement. The blood evidence, her inconsistent statements, it was all leading us to the same conclusion. The gravity of her words hung in the air, leaving the jury with no doubt about the strength of the evidence against Sarah. Detective Lawson detailed the moments he and his team interviewed Sarah, describing her anxiety and the visible signs of distress during the questioning. "She was nervous, almost paranoid," he recalled. "It was clear she was hiding something. Every time we brought up Jake, her demeanor changed." His account reinforced the prosecution's argument, illustrating Sarah's growing fear as her web of lies unraveled. Testimonies from the affair. As the trial progressed, the moment arrived for Jake's close friend, Tyler Smith, to take the stand. Tyler had been aware of the affair and reluctantly admitted to witnessing their interactions. "I tried to tell Jake to stop seeing her," he testified, his voice trembling. "But he was infatuated. I never thought it would end like this." Tyler's testimony brought a wave of emotion to the courtroom as the implications of their relationship became clear. Closing arguments. In closing arguments, ADA Martinez implored the jury to consider the lives shattered by Sarah's choices. "This is not just a case of a mother's love. It's about a woman who let her desires cloud her judgment, leading to the ultimate betrayal. She took Jake's life to protect her own lies." The emotional weight of her words hung heavy in the room as the jury absorbed the final statements. The verdict. As the jury deliberated, tension filled the courtroom. The moment the verdict was read, "We, the jury, find the defendant, Sarah Johnson, guilty of first-degree murder." A wave of gasps rippled through the spectators. Sarah's expression was one of shock and disbelief as she sat frozen in her seat, while family members of both Sarah and Jake broke down in tears. The trial, filled with gripping testimonies and emotional revelations, left an indelible mark on everyone present, illustrating the devastating impact of betrayal and the far-reaching consequences of hidden truths. Defense strategy. As the trial progressed, the defense team, led by attorney Michael Reed, aimed to portray Sarah Johnson as a mentally unstable mother driven to the edge by her circumstances. In his opening statement, Reed emphasized Sarah's psychological struggles, stating, "This is not a case of a cold-blooded killer. This is a story of a woman who was overwhelmed by her situation. Sarah loved Jake, but her mind was clouded by desperation and fear." To support this narrative, the defense called upon mental health professionals who testified about Sarah's psychological state. Dr. Angela Porter, a forensic psychologist, described Sarah as suffering from severe anxiety and depression. "She was in a state of emotional turmoil," Dr. Porter stated. "The pressure of keeping her affair a secret took a toll on her mental health. She was not in a rational state of mind when the tragic events unfolded." This testimony was intended to invoke sympathy from the jury, suggesting that Sarah's actions were not premeditated but rather a result of her deteriorating mental condition. Prosecution strategy. In stark contrast, the prosecution, represented by ADA Emily Martinez, presented Sarah as a manipulative and calculating individual. Martinez argued that Sarah had meticulously planned her affair and the subsequent murder of her stepson, Jake. During cross-examination, she pressed Dr. Porter on whether Sarah's actions could still be viewed as deliberate, despite her mental health issues. "Doesn't a person in a rational state of mind still make choices? Choices that lead to murder?" Martinez challenged, emphasizing the premeditated nature of Sarah's actions. One of the most shocking moments in court came when the prosecution revealed text messages between Sarah and Jake that were exchanged just days before his death. These messages, filled with passionate declarations of love and plans for a future together, painted a picture of a woman who was fully aware of the consequences of her actions. The courtroom fell silent as the jurors read the messages, underscoring the emotional depth of the relationship while highlighting Sarah's willingness to jeopardize everything for her forbidden love. Dramatic courtroom moments. Throughout the trial, there were several dramatic moments that underscored the nature of Sarah's actions. In one instance, Sarah was caught visibly reacting during the testimony of her husband, David Johnson, who described the moment he discovered Jake's body. The raw emotion in David's voice as he recounted the scene left many in tears, but Sarah's cold demeanor in contrast became a focal point for the prosecution, suggesting a lack of remorse. Another pivotal moment occurred when a hidden surveillance video was played in court, showing Sarah at a local park shortly after Jake's death, laughing and interacting with friends. The juxtaposition of her apparent normalcy with the horrific act she had committed created a profound sense of disbelief among the jury and attendees. Martinez used this video to argue, "This is the face of a murderer who has no understanding of the gravity of her actions." Closing arguments. In closing arguments, the courtroom was charged with emotion. Reed emphasized Sarah's struggles, pleading with the jury to recognize her mental state. "A person doesn't just snap, they reach a breaking point." Sarah was a mother caught in a web of deceit and despair. Meanwhile, Martinez delivered a powerful rebuttal. She is not a victim. She is a perpetrator who took her stepson's life to protect her own interests. The evidence is clear. She acted with intent, and she must be held accountable. The clash between the two narratives left the jury grappling with the complexities of Sarah's character and actions, setting the stage for their ultimate decision. The verdict. As the jury filed back into the courtroom, a heavy silence enveloped the room. Everyone held their breath, knowing the moment of truth had arrived. The foreperson stood and delivered the verdict. We find the defendant, Sarah Johnson, guilty of murder. A palpable tension filled the air as gasps echoed from the gallery. Sarah's expression remained eerily calm, her eyes betraying no emotion as she stared straight ahead, seemingly resigned to her fate. The gravity of the moment weighed heavily on her husband, David, whose face crumpled in disbelief, tears streaming down his cheeks. Family members of the victim exchanged glances filled with relief and sorrow, knowing justice had been served, but at a tremendous cost. As the judge prepared to announce the sentencing, the atmosphere in the courtroom was charged with a mix of anger, grief, and a sense of finality, marking the end of a tragic chapter in their lives. Sentencing. In 2022, Sarah Johnson was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison, a punishment reflecting the severity of her crime. The judge's voice was firm as he declared, "The loss of life, especially that of a child, can never be justified. Your actions have not only taken away a young life but have also devastated a family and a community." As the gavel struck, a wave of emotions surged through the courtroom. David Johnson, still reeling from the loss of his son, Jake, was unable to contain his anguish. He expressed a mixture of relief that justice had been served and profound grief over the irreversible damage done to their family. "I never thought I would lose my son like this. I don't think I'll ever recover from this pain," he said, his voice breaking. The impact of Sarah's actions rippled through the community in Springfield, Illinois. Neighbors who once viewed her as a devoted mother now struggled to comprehend how a person could commit such a heinous act. Support groups formed for those affected, and the local schools held memorials to honor Jake, ensuring his memory lived on amidst the tragedy. As Sarah was led away in handcuffs, the reality of her choices settled heavily on all present, a haunting reminder of the lengths to which people can go to protect their secrets and the irrevocable consequences that follow. Her once quiet and loving home became a site of sorrow, a chilling testament to the dark secrets that can fester within seemingly ordinary lives. Long-term impact. The aftermath of Sarah Johnson's actions devastated her family, leaving them in disbelief and grief. David Johnson struggled to come to terms with the reality that his wife was responsible for the death of their son, Jake. The once tight-knit family shattered, with relatives feeling betrayed and lost. "I never imagined I would have to bury my child because of his own mother," David lamented, haunted by the loss. The emotional toll was profound. Family gatherings turned into painful reminders of what had been lost, and relationships fractured under the weight of guilt and anger. Jake's siblings, Lily and Ethan, faced significant challenges in the wake of their brother's death. At just 12 and 9 years old, they were forced to navigate their grief without the support of their mother, who was now incarcerated. Both children struggled with feelings of abandonment and confusion, leading to behavioral issues at school and difficulties in forming new friendships. School counselors reported that Lily often drew pictures depicting her family together, only to tear them apart in a fit of sadness, while Ethan became withdrawn and expressed his anger through disruptive behavior. The community of Springfield, Illinois, was left reeling from the tragedy. Neighbors who once viewed the Johnsons as a normal family were now gripped by fear and suspicion. Trust eroded as families questioned their own safety and the hidden secrets that could be lurking behind closed doors. Local churches and community organizations rallied together, providing support for those affected by the crime, but the shadow of the event lingered. Memorials for Jake became a focal point for healing within the community, as residents gathered to remember the young boy whose life was tragically cut short. The case sparked discussions about mental health and the importance of communication within families, leading to community initiatives aimed at providing resources for those in need. Yet, The scars of this horrific event served as a constant reminder of the fragility of family bonds and the devastating consequences of betrayal. As time passed, the legacy of the Johnson family's tragedy continued to shape the community. It became a cautionary tale, highlighting the need for vigilance and open dialogue about the struggles families may face, ultimately reinforcing the idea that darkness can often lurk beneath the surface of everyday life. Springfield, Illinois, was left in shock following the revelation of Sarah Johnson's crime. The case quickly became one of the most chilling crimes in the city's recent history, embedding itself in the collective memory of its residents. Neighbors who once shared friendly smiles and waved to one another were now hesitant to engage, their sense of security shattered. Local news outlets covered the story extensively, with headlines highlighting the gruesome details and the emotional fallout from the tragedy. As the story unfolded, community members struggled to reconcile the image of the seemingly devoted mother with the horrific actions she had committed. Many expressed feelings of betrayal and disbelief. "I never thought something like this could happen in our neighborhood. It's like a nightmare," a longtime resident remarked. Vigils held in Jake's honor became a regular occurrence, drawing hundreds of people from all walks of life, each looking for solace and support. Community leaders organized discussions about the importance of mental health awareness and resources for families facing similar struggles, aiming to prevent such tragedies in the future. While these efforts brought people together, the painful memories of the Johnson family's story lingered, serving as a grim reminder of the fragility of trust and the hidden turmoil that can exist in even the most ordinary lives. As time went on, the case became a point of reference for discussions about family dynamics and the importance of open communication. Schools incorporated lessons on emotional well-being, encouraging students to share their feelings and seek help when needed. Despite these positive changes, the haunting memory of the crime remained, casting a long shadow over Springfield and forever altering its sense of community. As we reflect on the chilling story of Sarah Johnson and her stepson, it's important to remember the deeper implications of this tragedy. This case highlights the extreme lengths to which people will go to protect their secrets, even at the cost of innocent lives. The heartbreaking loss of young Jake serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked desires and hidden truths. We urge you to consider how vital it is to communicate openly within families and to seek help when faced with overwhelming situations. Let us not forget that behind every crime, there are real lives affected, lives that will never be the same. If you found this story as haunting and thought-provoking as we did, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe justice was truly served? What measures do you think can help prevent such tragedies in the future? Your engagement is crucial in keeping these conversations alive. Thank you for joining us in exploring this dark chapter of true crime. We appreciate you taking the time to delve into this harrowing story with us. If you found this true crime documentary compelling, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel for more gripping narratives. We want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on Sarah Johnson's case? Do you believe justice was truly served? Share your opinions in the comments below, as your insights are important in fostering meaningful discussions around these difficult topics. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for our next episode.